Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 21 of Sipping Tea with Stacey T. I am Stacey. Welcome. I'm going to be trying something different. So if you see me looking in two directions, it's because I'm trying to video myself on my laptop and on my cell phone. And I'll tell you a little bit why about that momentarily. But welcome. So glad you decided to spend a little bit of your Saturday afternoon with me. An hour. I'll try to keep it less than, but you know, sometimes the conversation gets good and we just keep talking. So again, welcome. Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be letting you select the tea that I drink, and you only get two options. So hey Tiffany, hey Cheryl, how you doing? Billy Joe, hey, how you doing? Welcome. So today I'm going to be trying a cold brew tea. So I've never actually done a cold brew like instant type situation. So you have two choices. You have the cold brew mixed berries option, or you have a cold brew English breakfast. So English classic. So which one am I doing? The first person who tells me is what I'll be doing. So is it one or two? Let me know. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the day so far and had a safe day yesterday. So glad that you made it, Billy Joe. It's exciting. Cold brew mixed berry. All right. So it takes 5 minutes to, all right, the berry. I got two berries. So let's try this out. I'm very nervous. To be honest, because what does it say? Unsweetened too. And yeah, I know, blah blah blah, I shouldn't be having as much sweetener, blah blah blah. Anyways, I'm gonna put it in, because it has you put it in cold, all right, and steep it for 5 minutes. So I will check on it. I have it in my glass. So again, for those of you who are like wondering why I keep kind of looking side to side, working on my process. And so I'll tell you why I'm looking side to side. So I am filming myself on my laptop, as I mentioned, and I'm filming myself on the camera. Mostly going to be looking at the camera. But last week was a great week. I had my 20th episode. Was so excited for you all to be there. So excited. Great content. We talked about happily ever after, what that is. And Instagram lost my entire episode. So it was not saved. I've been trying to get them to save it. I could see on the back end, I could see some of the information, but they didn't save it, and I'm not quite sure why. And so I did not want to take or run the risk that the content, even though, you know, not necessarily in the best vein, kind of looking side to side, want to make sure that it was not lost. So I apologize in advance if it's annoying that I keep kind of looking over and trying to give a little bit of time to my laptop, but that's why I'm doing that. It's not so I do not connect instantly to my YouTube. I actually have been so just kind of explain the backdoor process a little bit. You have to pay in order to save it on both platforms. So if I wanted to save it on Instagram, let's say TikTok and YouTube, I would have to have it on a third party that would connect all that information and then save it there. So what I've been doing is downloading it from my saved information here and then sending it to my YouTube and doing that. So that's been what I've been doing for all my episodes, and nothing changed except for the fact that it did not save. So I just want to make sure that I do have content, and I'm going to be working on that process. As you guys know, I'm not working. I'm unemployed. Have been for several months at this point. And so I've been trying to be a little bit particular about, you know, how I'm spending my money, because there is a fee, a monthly fee to do it on like StreamYard or one of those other platforms. But that may be what I do, because I really do believe in the purpose of this, the work that I'm doing here. So that's probably the next step. So pray for me as I go about that process, but that's what it is. With that being said, for those of you who just came in, I'm doing Twinings cold brew mixed berry. It's iced tea. I am steeping it in here. I don't know if you guys can see that it is kind of getting a little bit brown. a tiny smidge brown. So we'll see. But again, hopefully you guys enjoyed your the week last week. I really did. I think, talking about how our happily ever after is ourselves, or we have to make ourselves happy, is so important. And I can't stress enough how I've been tapping into that myself, and I've been, making sure that I'm cognizant of that. And, it's a challenge. I'm not going to lie and say to you that it's not. It's easier because what we've always grown up on is, somebody's going to rescue us and make us happy and blah, 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 right? And it's not to say that people don't add to our happiness, but we have to find that within ourselves. So today I'm going to be talking about luggage. And this is another topic that actually my mom came up with. My mom's been really integral in giving me lots of really great topics that I feel like I resonate with. And that's why, you're going to have this one today. But what I will also say is, regardless of, because I was very disappointed in last week's episode and the loss of that, and I'm going to try to figure out how to kind of recreate some semblance of that. But what I will say is luggage comes from something that I hadn't even tapped into until I was really like looking at how I hold things, how I carry things, and I was carrying the frustration and the sadness of that all week. We'll talk about how we carry things and pack things away for, weeks at end and time at end. So the other thing that I want to let you guys know, for those of you who have been around for a while, I did indeed start writing. So the Sipping Tea with Stacey T will be a book. The first 20 episodes, even the 20th one that was lost, will be a book, and my goal is to have it out by the end of this year. So it's been an interesting process. I kind of wrote the foreword, what I want the book to do for people, and then started writing the first couple of chapters. So I'm excited, and my sister's good because she's trying to keep me on track with that. She did ask me this week, are you staying on track with that? And I was like, yeah, I am. But no, I actually am doing pretty well. So thank you for your support with that as well. And hopefully when it comes out, I'm going to be, I think, publishing it on Amazon, but I haven't quite, worked that out yet. But I'm hoping for your support in that too. So let us get started. Luggage. For those of you who have not been here before, I kind of go through childhood all the way up to the present time. And so, when I think about Stacey as a child and luggage, the first thing that comes to mind is my Barbies. Right? You're like, what? We had an old white, it was like white piece of luggage that we put our Barbies in. And we would jam that sucker full. Jam it full of Barbie dolls. And it was like one of the old school ones that had like the, the thing in the front, the metal piece in the front where you like click it and that's how it opened. And, we wanted to make sure we kept, and it was funny because why would you have to put your Barbies in I guess it was like the new school, like how they have like all these chests and drawers for their dolls and whatnot. But we put them in a suitcase. And I think, looking back on it is, one, we found importance in them, so we wanted to make sure that they stayed together. And I don't know if it was like for us, if anything happens, we're gonna grab that suitcase and leave. I don't know if that was that wasn't like our go bag, but I think that we thought there was an importance to it. But the thing that I really want to unpack is the fact that we jammed it full of stuff. Like, we want to make sure that every last Barbie, sometimes we want to try to get the dream house or the car or whatever, the pool, any accessories that we had, and we want to jam it into that, right? And I thought about the process of that now. So before I get into that, hey, Kathy, how you doing? Before I get into that, I want you to tell me right now in the chat, are you an overpacker or are you a light packer? So when you have to go somewhere, go on vacation, go away for the weekend, if you're fortunate enough or blessed enough to do that, or if you're traveling, are you a light packer or are you a person that's an overpacker? So let me know that in the chat. And this is starting to steep, so this is interesting. I'm drinking for you that just came in, Kathy, this is my drink today, cold brew mixed berry. And it is well, obviously cold, so you're hearing the ice. But yeah, trying to. It's 5 minutes I have to wait, so you have to be an overpacker. I get that. Cheryl, extremely overpacked, so that's how you travel. Yeah, and we'll talk about that. We're gonna unpack the packing style, which is very interesting, because even as I was preparing for this, and thinking about how I pack, and even times where I've tried to kind of change or morph out of my typical packing style, yeah, it's very interesting. You know why? Absolutely, I do know why. You have some obligations. It's not like, but let's say like you didn't have that, or do you think that on your own, before that, like even if you had to go over somebody's house or somebody was coming to your house, and you were preparing for them, like, are you a person that has to, you're good and you're a light packer? Good for you. So we have 2 overpackers and a light packer. I will tell you momentarily. I think you probably already know what style of packer I am if you have any idea of me, but yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that momentarily. But, well, I guess Kathy can help you, Cheryl, since she's such a light packer. Maybe that's a side hustle to get into. she can absolutely help you with that. Well, I'm volunteering her. I'm like, yeah, she can help you with that. No, but I think that, one of the things that I have started to tap into a lot is, as you're getting older and you realize areas that are good for you, or you're good at, then you should be helping people with those things. Like, that should be absolutely a thing, helping people to navigate, hey, I'm good at this. Like, for example, I write resumes, and as a side hustle, right? And, people will ask me, hey, I have a question about that. And I'll be talking about something else. As I'm talking to you guys today, I'm kind of excited about, even though last week and losing the material was really hard on me, just so many things positively, creatively have been happening, and I've been in the thoughts of, so I'm excited about that. If I didn't have this, I would be a light packer. See, it's so interesting how people do have that ability to pack lightly. I think that some of that may be how we were raised. If you have, and there are obviously 2 sides to every coin. So what I'm going to say, you might be like, oh, that doesn't resonate with me. But like, if you feel for some reason that you always had to be prepared to be on the go, or if you didn't feel like, you had, you had, I don't want to say stability, but for lack of better terms, then you might be like very easy, like, okay, I have to be able to go, I have to be able to go and move about, right? If you felt like, you had a lot of responsibility, or if you felt like, things could change in an instant, then you might be on the other side of the spectrum. You might be an overpacker. So both of those could lend itself to each other, because I know some people that have had really hard childhoods, and they always pack light. They're like, nothing's important. I don't hold anything with like true value that's going to stress me out to the point where I'm, I have to have something with me or I don't feel complete. So that's like not how they're built. And then you have people on the other side of the spectrum that are like, no, I need to be able to have everything in my fingertips, and they already have a go bag. Like, there are some people that have a go bag right now. If anything were to happen, they like know exactly where all the important things are. They can grab them, or they're already packed and they're ready to go, right? That's just how they are. That's how they're built and prepared for life. So let's go back to, and I will, by the way, reveal my style of packing. But let's go back to, that younger version of ourselves. And, even in, like, for those of us who are, I think we're all females right now, but, looking back into, like, our little purses, if we had purses, what did you put? Did you put a lot of stuff in your purse? Were you like the person that was like, okay, I need to have a safety pin, a bobby pin, I have to have lip gloss or lipstick, I have to have tissues, I have to have cough drops, I have to have mints? Like, were you that person, or you just put like, you have a go bag in your trunk ready to go? And is that ready to travel, or is that for like emergencies that may happen? You know, some people are like, okay, if emergency happens, I'm ready to go, or I have one and I just am ready to travel. It may be the same one. But you know, what I was saying is, regardless of, you know, the style, I'm sorry, I thought you wrote something. Regardless of the style, there's, for some reason, I'm having a little bit, I'm not sure if you guys are having any feedback, but I'm having a tiny bit. So I use purple packing cubes to limit overpacking. Did you read what I wrote when I created this? So I actually talked about people that are packing cube types, and there are absolutely all different types of packers to avoid, you know, overpacking. So yours is for emergencies, and that's smart. I think that's smart, and I actually want to get to that point because I think it's important that we have, you know, okay, if something happens, we have our preparations already in place. I think that's really important. But like I said, you know, as a kid and you're just living your life because of some of the situations that we're involved in or invested in, how we prepare, even something as simple as our purses, or, you know, some people, if they didn't carry purses, they put stuff in their pockets. Yes, I need it all. What ifs, and I like the versatility. Yeah, I mean, but again, you learn that from something. Maybe you learned it from watching other people pack, you know, because obviously as young kids, we weren't necessarily responsible for packing bags, even for school. So let's go from, you know, that little kid that might have their first little purse and they're excited and they put their little cute little things in their purse, and, you know, you have it and you carry it like this, just dangling on your wrist instead of, or maybe you really want to be grown up and you put it over your shoulder, right? So there's that. But then there's also like preparing for school. Now, school is interesting because I feel like, especially, you know, elementary school is one thing. You know, you carry like a ruler that you don't need right away, right? Crayons and pencils and pens and some notebooks and maybe a couple folders. But then as you continue to grow, the weight of your bag continues to grow. And I want you to think about that. You know, obviously your responsibilities grow. So you went from, you know, going to school and, you know, coloring, or going to school and recess and lunch being the things that you were excited about. And then you go into, you know, middle school, for example, and now you're bouncing around from class to class. You may have a locker, and so you're switching out what's in your bag. But at the same time, there's an expectation that you're always going to have things with you. Now, there were some interesting people in high school, and I'm curious about you all. And again, if you can write this in the chat, when you were in middle school and high school, were you a person that carried a bag from class to class, or did you just carry the book that you needed for that class and like maybe a pen or a pencil and a notebook? I'm curious about because I feel like there are different ways that people do those things. I absolutely always had a backpack. Like, it didn't matter what time of day, it didn't matter what classes, or if I was going to be able to go to my locker and, you know, grab something, I always had a backpack with me. And I remember you had a backpack from class to class. Yeah, there are some people who, I remember even when I was on school committee, I would, you know, sometimes go into the school and they literally would only have just the book for their class. And I'm thinking, how in the world do you do that, from jumping from like one side of the school to the other? Or are you not going to go to class is my next question. You know, I think that's you know, normal. Now, in your bag, did you have notebooks, pencils, pens, like several notebooks? Or did you just have, I have this class, I have this folder, and I have this book? Like, were you that type? Bag, and I'm still a bag lady to this day. I will not deny that you love a bag. You absolutely love a bag. And there's something to that. I want us to think about that, because the things that we do don't just happen out of nowhere. I think sometimes we give, you know, just living life as, oh, I just, you know, I don't know where I just adopted this habit. But truly, if we think about things, there's a reason why we're doing all of these things. Why are we carrying all this excess stuff? Or why are we not? Why are we so, you know, to the point where everything is just like, you know, regimented and everything just is in its place? There's a reason and a rhyme to a reason to everything that we're doing. All right, this has gotten a little bit on the darker side. It probably looks lighter to you all, but it is actually darker, and it's been 5 minutes. I'm nervous, y'all. Because it's not as dark as like regular tea would be, but it's just interesting. You have a color, you carried a color-coded book and went with every, oh Lord. So you were super organized. You had a book that matched the color that went to the, okay, good for you. Okay, well, I don't think it's steeped enough because it's like so faint. It does taste like mixed berries, but I'm gonna wait a little while longer. I thought that was, well, I know it was 5 minutes, but it still doesn't really taste like much of anything. So I'm gonna wait for it to get a little bit on the stronger side. I taste like tiny bit of mixed berry. All right, so let's go into middle school. So we're going into middle school and high school. In middle school, you are tasked with going to different classes. Well, I was. I don't know about you. I guess all middle schools or junior highs may be slightly different in how they function. But, you know, I would go from class to class, and I would have my notebooks, and I would have my backpack. My backpack stayed heavy. Stayed heavy. I would have books upon books in there, and notebooks. And then what would happen, it's because I was not like Tiffany and was super organized, is I would forget a notebook for one class, and so I would go to the back of the next notebook and then write it, and then I would have to take out those notes. And if I was being diligent, and sometimes I was, or if I had nothing else to do, which is more likely the reason why, I would transfer those notes from the notebook that they weren't supposed to be in to the right notebook. But I wasn't as organized. And so what would happen is I would just start to carry tons and tons of notebooks. And I find that sometimes the classes that you take require you to carry more things too. Obviously, if you're in like an English class and you're reading a book, then potentially you don't have to bring like your heavy English book, but you can just bring the book that you're reading at the time, which might be like a tiny little book. But if you're like in a biology class, those books are heavy and crazy to carry around. You used to wrap the books. Yeah, I mean, back in the day we had a lot going on with our books and how we you know, covered them and decorated them and all that jazz. But, you know, again, I already started carrying a lot of heavy weight in my bags way back in middle school. And I really recognized it as because I didn't want to forget something. I didn't want to be the person in class that they called on and didn't have what I needed to have, or wasn't prepared, or couldn't find whatever I needed to find. And that thought of being ill prepared really, it made me nervous. Now, obviously, I could have used a technique like Tiffany was saying. And Tiffany was like, well, I had everything color coded, and she was very organized. And for some reason, and I'm not quite sure, that's for another episode potentially, but to unpack why I didn't have like an organized brain, or the way I went about things wasn't a highly organized way. But I didn't. And so because I didn't, I did not want to have anything out of my fingers' reach, right? I remember back in our day, now they banned them, but remember when they had those, the backpacks that you could like, you know, drag with you on wheels? They banned them now because people started fighting with the backpacks. I don't know, I guess, you know, every generation is very different. So they were like, nah, you guys can't use those anymore. You have to just have your regular backpacks or bags. That's it. But those would be something that, you know, for me, and they didn't have them when I was they didn't start to do that when I was in school, in high school and middle school. But those were things that, you know, I get it. I get why you would want to have that instead of having it on your back. And the other thing that you'll note about carrying a bag, especially for those of you who still do, is that you're actually supposed to switch the shoulder that you carry it on, right? Backpacks are interesting because they have two straps, but if you look at most kids back in the day, they only put it on one arm, right? You just grab it, put it on one arm, and leave. Now they're really trying to get kids to, like, you know, put it on both shoulders and even use that strap around the middle so that it distributes the weight. Why? Because they know that kids oftentimes are in school carrying more weight than they need to be carrying, right? Way more weight. Being visually impaired, colors are less stressful when being organized. No, that totally makes sense. That entirely makes sense. But I think that in general, you created a system of organization for yourself that made you feel comfortable, right? And oftentimes the things that we do are for feelings of safety, feelings of comfort. And so that makes sense that you designed a system. And I wish I had done the same thing, but I never designed that. And I feel like a lot of the things that I do, especially coming to like things like bag and baggage or luggage, is the fact that I just wanted everything with me at all times. So when you go towards, when I went towards high school, that was an ongoing thing all the way through middle school, going into high school. And then in high school, my family had, housing difficulties. And I remember then having, the feeling of total displacement, right? If you've ever had housing insecurity, if you've ever been, not sure of your housing, it makes you, it makes how you look at things be very, very intentional. It can make things very scary for you. And because you want to make sure that things that are important to you are not lost or are not misplaced, or you can find them, because again, that can be a challenge within itself. You carry everything. And I remember initially, when things were happening in the family, not knowing where things were, and that feeling being horrible. I mean, basic things like, undergarments, that type of thing. Like, where are they? And when those types of things happen to you, I find that you have more of a likelihood to put on that backpack. And I don't mean literally, right? But you're now bags. It's important where a bag is. It's important how much you can fit in and jam in the bag so that you have access to things and it doesn't feel like you're entirely out of control. So there's a thing that happens that you now consistently are doing. But I want to take a pause, because even though I'm talking about the physical manifestation of carrying luggage is something that we carry emotionally as well, right? So if you go back to those early years as young Stacey, there were things that, I was seeing and hearing that you sometimes, especially as a little kid, you just push them away, right? You catalog those things back. You're not thinking about those things, or you're not giving those things attention. But as you start to get older and things start to make more sense, or you start to unpack things, you feel the weight of things, right? You feel the weight and the stress of having that emotional luggage. And that emotional luggage could be feeling like you don't fit in somewhere. That emotional luggage can be feeling like you're not loved or nobody cares about you. That emotional luggage can feel like you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough. There can be so many things that attribute to that emotional luggage. But the problem is that we just pack things on top of it, right? So we have this luggage that we've had since a kid, right? They're little things, and it could be little things, little nuggets that people say to you that they don't think is important. They don't think is going to be damaging, right? But it is to you because it matters to you. And so now as a kid, especially, if you're in the generation of speak when spoken to, or, we obviously, a lot of us are what happens in this house stays in this house generation, or, I'll give you something to cry about generation, right? So a lot of the way kids felt back then was minimized. And I'm sure that every generation will probably say that. I can only speak to the one that I was raised in. But, a lot of how kids felt, or kids' opinions, they didn't welcome opinions. They didn't ask you how you felt. You lived your life and that was it, right? And so those things, that way of having emotions be kind of cut off or shut off or crunched, right? Those types of things, what do? You can only internalize them. So now you have all this emotion that you're told not to feel and not to express, and so you don't. You literally repress it, you choke it down year after year after year. And so now you're getting older. Now, you're in 5th grade and you're angry all the time, and people are like, why is this kid the bad kid? Why is this kid always acting out? And it could be that there's all this emotional baggage that people left at your doorstep expecting you to put it on your back, and nobody can see it, right? It's not like a backpack that you physically wear in school that is weighing you down and, you know, making you have a curved back if it's too heavy. Nobody can see it. It's internal baggage, internal luggage, weight that has been put on you, and you have no idea when you're supposed to take it off because nobody wants to hear it. And quite frankly, because even if there's a point where you were able to finally do that, you don't know when that is. Why? Because nobody's told you that it's safe for you to do that. Nobody's told you that they care to hear that. They've just literally said, okay, yeah, you know, okay, great, you know, oh, you're bleeding? All right, great. Did you die? No? All right, cool. Right? So you're told to try to manage, which is so crazy. You're told as a kid to try to manage your emotional intelligence. And my emotional intelligence hasn't been discussed for a gazillion years. It's like a newer thing. But you're told as a kid how to manage your emotions, and that's not, one, it's not fair. One, it's not rational. Like as an adult, you're telling somebody to manage something that you yourself don't know how to manage. How does that make any type of sense? It doesn't. But you're literally telling your kid, and it's almost like, it's funny because when you think about it, it's almost as if parents were putting this invisible backpack on you before they were putting the one that you had to, you know, wear to school. So now you have this double load of weight that you're carrying every single day. Partially people can see, and then part no one sees. And it can make you feel very isolated. So on top of, you know, what happens in this house stays in this house, or keep your mouth shut, or nobody cares, or be quiet, or it's not that dramatic, or stop being dramatic. On top of all of that, now you're told not to express it, right? So, and that nobody would care if you had to say it anyways, or like somebody's always worse off than you, which is absolutely the case. But that doesn't negate that you are personally having a hard time, or personally having a difficult time navigating. And it's really, as an adult now, so hard for me to imagine that parents sometimes don't get that, right? There's no way for me to manage something you yourself have not learned how to manage, right? You haven't learned how to communicate. You haven't learned how to be even keeled. You haven't like, so you're wanting me as a, you know, hormonal teenager to learn how to do something you have yet to conquer yourself. Okay, sure, just put that on as another baggage that I'm supposed to be expected to manage. So I think that that's something that, as I was looking at this and preparing for this, I want to give the example of obviously school, because that's something we can all visualize. But even before that, you know, as we're going through school, we have a personal, spiritual, emotional luggage that we carry all the way through our lives. So now we're in high school and we're trying to, you know, figure out what our next steps in our lives are, which is another scary thing that young kids are expected to manage and to think through and to, you know, be smart about. But it's like, I'm 17, 16 years old and you want me to figure out my life? Okay. Have you figured out your life yet? No? Okay. But sure, I'll figure out mine at 16 years old. So that's an additional feeling of weight, right? An additional bag that gets, because I remember how much, as like, I want to say like maybe when I was 14, 15, and it wasn't so much my family, but I remember people in general talking about, oh, you have to make sure you pick the right college, or you have to make sure you pick the right major, or you have to make sure that you pick the right this and the right that. And it was so stressful just hearing that, because what they were saying is, if you pick the wrong thing, your life is doomed. And I'm like, my God, I'm 16 years old, and you're telling me my life is doomed if I pick the wrong major? That's a lot of stress, a lot of baggage, a lot of weight to put on people. But often, again, fast forwarding into Stacey now, I can see that a lot of that was because people felt like they failed themselves. So a lot of it is literally, you know, them projecting how they feel about themselves, or where they're at, or what they didn't do, or things they wish they had done, all of which is valid. But the problem is putting that on somebody who's 16 who hasn't even processed how to deal with their own personal thoughts is a lot. It's a lot. And we consistently do that. And the reason why I feel like this particular episode was important is because we have to be mindful of when we do that to others, right? Because it's not necessarily just to your child, because I don't have kids, but I'm sure that I have put luggage on other people, being stressed out about, what I'm doing or how I'm doing or any of those things, right? It's not something that we set out to do, but it is something that we have to be mindful of. Now, that does not mean we don't share. Yeah, living through their children is very real. It's very, very real. Now, I have to say, even while I'm saying that we may put some stuff on other people, that does not mean you should not share what you're going through. If you're going through trauma, if you're going through something that is hard and you're having a hard time managing, please talk to someone you trust, not just anybody, because some people just want to listen to your stuff so they can talk mess, right? So I'm not talking about just talking to anybody, because not everybody deserves the honor of your vulnerability. Not everybody, that's an honor to be able to be included in or, respected enough to have somebody be vulnerable with you. Totally different thing. So don't share with everybody. Be mindful. Have some discernment about who you should be talking to about what. But at the same time, I want you to understand that that's important. That being said, also make sure if you are sharing stuff that's going on with you, that you give the other person time to talk about what's happening to them. Because other than that, you just become a dumping ground, right? Like, oop, Stacey's pulling in. She's just going to unload all her mess. And I just have to, I'm a garbage disposal, right? And oftentimes I think that because people see people in certain veins, like they might think, oh, this person's super strong, or this person is always a great listener. And those things may be true, right? Those things can absolutely be true, but that can also be exhausting, right? It can also be exhausting because now I'm taking my luggage and saying, whoo, thank you so much, Tiffany. You can hold on to that, right? And Tiffany's like, I gotta, women, time out. I have enough of my own stuff. And it's not to say she wouldn't listen to me. It's not to say that she wouldn't pray for me or even give me advice. None of those things is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we need to be mindful about reciprocity, right? Am I giving to someone and expecting them to give back, if that's positive or challenging, or am I just a dumping ground, right? And you expect that person to be a human garbage disposal for all your stuff, because that's additional weight that they have to carry. If you're a person like me who is so empathetic and feels things very deeply for myself and others, then that's very challenging. It's something I've had to consistently work on and be like, okay, Stacey, you have to give that to God, because you can't hold that yourself. That is way too much weight for you to be holding. You need to give that to God, because other than that, you're going to walk around the world like this. Like constantly devastated and downtrodden, and that's not how you want to show up in the world, right? But again, just be mindful of that. Now, back to high school, going into college. In college, now you have an additional, or depending on what it was that you did, but I'm just speaking about myself. I'm now going into college, and I have additional baggage, right? Because the baggage is the stress that I put on myself, as well as all the I'll call them well wishes wrapped in stress. And what I mean by that is, Stacey, you have a big opportunity. Don't mess it up, and then it would be like, you're representing us. And I'm not just talking about my family, but other people would be like, oh, you're representing us, and, go out there and make us proud. And all those things are well wishes, right? But they are wrapped sometimes in stress, because you're now like, oh my gosh, I don't want to make any bad choices. I don't want to make any wrong decisions. What if people see me do something wrong and then they think this of me? And it's additional baggage now, additional luggage that I'm now throwing. And this is not stuff I've chosen to carry. It's now things because of the weight of people's words. People grossly underestimate the power of words and the weight of their words, right? You're going to change the world. That sounds great, But now I'm like, oh my gosh, they think I'm gonna change the world. What if I just want to be, I want to change one person's life? What if I just want to be a positive person living life? Now they think I'm gonna change the world. How am I change the world? I don't know what I'm supposed to do, right? So now you have all these additional weights, all this additional baggage, all this additional luggage, and when do you check it? Because at this point, this luggage is heavy, and I'm only in college. Now, some people say, well, you put that on yourself. Maybe if I had known how to manage and navigate what to take off of that, maybe that's true, right? But that's not a lesson that I learned. And when do you learn that lesson? If we're going to be honest, when do you learn that lesson of, okay, I need to drop this off? I get it that it was their opinion, it's their thought. And I was very much a person that, would hear what people had to say. I didn't always, live by what they had to say, because I recognized from an early age that my life is my life and their life is their life, and you can have opinions, and that's fantastic, but what you're expecting from me doesn't always work for me. So I knew that from a young age, but navigating people's disappointment or navigating what people would say that I had to do, or how I had to be, or how I had to look, all those were weights that I wore. And I didn't necessarily want to wear them, but I had no idea how to take those things off. Because it was like ingrained. You listen to your elders, you respect your elders, they know, they've lived life, blah, 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 blah. All of that is true, but the life that they live is not necessarily the life God has for you. So it's the kind of that journey to figuring out what is for you, right? And unfortunately, sometimes that means taking off luggage and checking it. So how do we get to that point where we can check our luggage? How do we get to the point where we can say, you know what, I appreciate what you have to say, I appreciate your thoughts, your opinions are valid, but they don't work for me, or I think it's great that you are invested in my future, however. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of us have a hard time, not a hard time with conversations in business, but a harder time in conversations personally, where we have to kind of, and I don't want to say check somebody, but like dial them in, and let them understand that, yes, everybody can have an opinion, right? They're allowed. You are 100% allowed to have an opinion. But what you're not allowed to do is to make me feel like what I'm doing in the span of, trying to figure out who I am, or, like, you don't get to design that. God already designed that. You can have an opinion, right? But the reality of it is I have to navigate how much luggage that I can carry. And carrying the weight of your luggage and mine gets overwhelming. That's when you hear people say that they are having breakdowns. And I've been there. 100% had a very hard time managing people's expectations of me, because there was this, time where people thought, everything that the Thompsons did was perfect. And I'm like, where? Like, where did you get that false intel? Please let me know. I would love to be able to dispel that for you, because I can tell you that is not the case. Oh, the Thompson girls, they're perfect, and da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, no, nobody's perfect. But the idea of that was interesting, because of that, you had some people who didn't want to associate with us at all, right? Because we thought we were perfect. And then you had people that were, able to get to know us, and we're like, oh, they're regular human beings with regular stress and regular problems and regular desires from their life and fears and all the things, right? We are literally not bots. But the expectation that was put on us, the expectation that, many people associated with us it was very stressful for me, because I started to adopt that mentality in my head. If I mess up, if whatever that means, right? If I fall out of line, if I don't do the right thing, whatever that means, right? I'm going to reflect badly, and then everybody will think badly of not just me, but everybody in my family, right? And that is crazy to put on somebody in college. It's crazy to put on anybody, period, regardless of the age or stage of their life. That is nuts. I mean, it's just like saying, you know, oh, I saw that. And it happens in race lines too, right? Oh, black people are... Like, stop that. Like, absolutely stop that. Oh, you know how black people are. How are we? Because I'm black. How am I? Let me know. Right? Yes, I'm a passionate person, and I happen to be black, and I happen to be intelligent, and I happen to love the Lord, and I happen to be many things, right? But no black person is a monolith. And what will happen is, unfortunately, some people adopt what people keep saying about them. They keep wearing that weight. That weight keeps breaking them down and breaking them down. And then all of a sudden, they become the thing that people kept saying that they were, right? Because what else am I going to be other than the weight of the words? Because again, people don't understand the weight of their words. That is luggage that you have to check. And I don't want to pay for that luggage. Right? Jesus paid it all, so I don't want to pay for that luggage at the Sky Cap or any of that. I just want to get it off of my back. So you have to make that decision. You have to be the person that says, okay, you know what? I don't want to wear this weight anymore. But you have to identify it, because there are going to be points and times where we're so acclimated to something. We're so used to hearing the same thing over and over and over again. We're so used to people telling us how we should be, how we should live, how we should dress, who we should speak to, who we should not speak to, where we should go, where we should live, like all these things. And I'm like, how do you have time to be worried? I mean, when do you have time to think about yourself? Because you spend a lot of time thinking about me and what I'm doing. I'm just curious. But again, because some of the people matter to us, we put it on, right? It's like those weighted, what they call them, the weighted vests that people work out in. It's like another one, right? Another one and another one. So like, this is our new luggage. This is our new luggage. We don't have to have those hard shell, old school luggage that I didn't put the Barbie dolls in. The new luggage is people's words and people's expectations. And it doesn't leave room. I talked about this in one of my other episodes. I talked about dreaming. Right? And there was an age where we stopped dreaming, and I still haven't quite figured out what that is. But the problem becomes that we stop dreaming because people keep telling us that we shouldn't. That's the reality. You shouldn't. Be an adult. What does that even mean? Be an adult means I can't dream? I can't have hopes for myself? Is there an age cutoff on hope? Like, what in the world? But we start to believe it. We take it as true. We're like, okay, well, I guess this person who, you know, has lived life and they seem to have their stuff together, they're telling me that I shouldn't, you know, I'll put on this luggage. It must be the case. And then you're living whose life? You're living a luggage heavy life. And that person's doing their own thing. Right? They're doing their own thing entirely. And I'm not saying don't take advice. If people have good advice, digest it and do what you will with that advice. Right? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I'm not listening to nobody. Stacey told me not to listen to nobody. That's not what I'm saying to you. What I am saying to you is recognize that people may have been telling you to carry luggage and you are way down. That's the long and short of it. You're weighed down by the luggage that you didn't even ask to carry. So I told you I was going to tell you what type of packer I am. I'm an overpacker. And being an overpacker, oftentimes, and I've gotten a lot better, I will say. There have been times that I didn't even overpack. I was like, I'm just bringing this and that's it. And I was like, go ahead, Stacey, it is possible, right? But what I also recognize, especially if you travel, and Tiffany mentioned this before, if you're traveling with someone else, then there's often times that you don't just take what you need, but you're leaving room in your suitcase for things other people need, right? So you may not bring them, but you're like, okay, they don't have room in their luggage, so I'm going to carry their stuff too. How are you carrying your weight in somebody else's? How? Life can be challenging enough. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me, but life can be challenging enough without me carrying somebody else's stuff, right? It just can be. And again, that doesn't mean you're not loving and supportive and a good shoulder. You should be all of those things. But you can't necessarily carry their stuff. And sometimes carrying their stuff means they don't figure out what they need to do for them. So you've heard the term enabling. Sometimes that means you're enabling them because you're saying, all right, you can't fit it. I'll carry your stuff and my stuff. No, maybe they need to figure out how to use the cube system that Tiffany uses, right? They need to figure out how to carry what is enough for them to carry without carrying other people's stuff. I mean, some of the stuff that we carry are family secrets because every family has them. Family disappointment, loss, because loss is a huge weight for people. And if you can't release that the person is not here in the physical and that, you know, you're not seeing them, and those are challenging things. I've experienced loss, right? Lots of loss. And so it can be challenging. But like, again, the purpose of life is for you to consistently, you know, show up every day. And that how you show up every day is going to be different, but it is for you to show up daily. All right, I'm going to try this drink again because I only have a minute or so before I end. And I know y'all like, Stacey ain't drinking that. Okay, it's not horrible, but it doesn't, I don't know if I didn't do anything right because it literally said just add tea bag to cold water and steep for 5 minutes. Add ice and sweeten. So I did all the things, but it just, it's very light. Maybe that's the purpose. I don't know. But it's very, very faint, the flavor. It's not bad. It is unsweetened because, so you know, I'm like, But again, if you want to try it, give it a try. Twinings cold berry iced tea. So in closing, I just want you to be thinking about this. A lot of things that happen in our lives happen to us, and many of the things happen because of us, right? From our own choices. I don't think that you're going to be able to stop things happening to you, right? Because you don't live in a bubble. And even if you lived in a bubble, that would be happening to you. So you're not going to be able to stop that. But what I want you to be aware of now is how much of the things that are happening to you are you putting on, are you carrying as luggage? And how much can you stop when you get to that airport, right? That emotional airport, that spiritual airport, that mental airport. How much of it can you say, hey, I'm here to check this. This is not a bag I want to carry through the airport, right? It's not a bag I want to carry through life. I'm going to check this. It doesn't mean, because when you check something, it still means you acknowledge it, right? But it means I'm not carrying that at this moment. That's something I see, I acknowledge, it's there. It may even be a part of me, but I'm not going to continue to carry that as I navigate this airport, as I navigate this part of my journey. I'm going to check it, put it that way, and then keep walking. And I think, unfortunately, what we do is we take other people's stuff, we check that, what we do is we check our own comfort. That's what we do. We're like, well, I guess I don't need my comfort. I'll just check that. And I'll take on the stress, the disappointment, the hurt, the anger, all the things. I'm going to check my happiness. That I'll check. But I'll keep this luggage here. And what I want you to do, I want you to start looking at that and the why behind why you're doing that. Is it because you're a people pleaser and you're more important, you're more apt to make people happy than to make yourself happy? And as we spoke about last week, your happiness is your responsibility. Nobody can make you happy unless you're happy. No one. They could give you all the things in the world. They could pay for all the things. They could, show you all these new experiences. And those will be fantastic. But if you're not happy within yourself, you're going to be a miserable rich person, right? And there's many of those. Not saying I will mind the rich part. But being miserable and rich is just being miserable with more money and then more misery, right? So what I will say is you need to think about that. Think about what it is that you are checking and what you're carrying. Because most people are carrying so much luggage, so much excess baggage, so much hurt, so much disappointment, and have checked their comfort for the sake of someone else, for the sake of an image, for the sake of whatever it is. I want you to choose to check that and not check your happiness, not check your wholeness, not check your mental health, because you feel like that's the thing you're supposed to do because somebody else said it, right? If God didn't tell you to do that, if God didn't tell you to set something aside for the time, then be mindful about why you're doing it. Be very, very clear that it is important that you exist in the way that you are supposed to exist. And again, the people that love you will love you. The people that are meant to be in this season of your life will be there. And if they're not, then they're not. And I know that sounds callous, but I'm getting to the point where I recognize that for me to go to certain areas or to go to what people call the next level, then there are some people that can't fly at every altitude. There are some birds that don't fly at every altitude, right? Eagles soar the highest. They can look at all the things below them. And you've probably seen that image online where something was trying to fly on an eagle's back and attack it. I think it was a crow. And the eagle didn't even freak out. What did the eagle do? It just kept going higher and higher because they recognized their lung power can do that. The other bird, it couldn't hang with them. So there are some people in life that are just not going to be able to hang with you. And I think, unfortunately, we sacrifice that desire for the comfort of familiarity for the fact that we're not happy. And we're not even content. There's no joy. And I think that's what we want to make sure we have in our backpack. And the other stuff, let's check that. And again, that doesn't mean you can't look in the bag and take what's out when it's necessary or when you're healthy or whole enough to do that, but not until then. So hopefully this was a helpful episode. It helped me as I navigated talking through it. So thank you guys again for joining me. One other thing that I want to tell you, and I talked to you about how things creatively are happening for me, is I've had lots of different types of jobs, and one of the jobs that I've had is helping people with employment, which is funny because I'm unemployed, right? However, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be having a spin-off of Sipping Tea. And the spin-off for Sipping Tea is Sipping Tea with Stacey T, Ask Stacey. And in that, you'll be able to ask me any employment questions, and I'm excited about that. So I'll have that spin-off fairly soon. You may start seeing posts about that. So I'm going to be making like random videos, like minute-long videos, 30-second videos. Probably, my goal is to try to do them daily. I might record a whole bunch and then upload them daily, but my whole goal is to have them posted daily on my YouTube. Hopefully you guys are also looking at my YouTube channel, and I really ask you guys, if anything else, please share my posts, even share this live. You can share this after, so that other people are seeing it. We're bringing people to the content, and that's my goal. And I also want to thank, I got a really awesome gift. I'm going to show you all in a post. You'll see it. But it said Sipping Tea was, it basically said, it talked about writing. The person who writes has power, and it had my name engraved in it and my name on a pen as well. And I just want to thank you, because it's so, when you're doing things like this, you don't know who it touches. And so having somebody do something so thoughtful meant so much to me. So thank you. And other than that, I will leave how I always do. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and extend to yourself, and please to me, a measure of grace. I will see you next week on Sipping Tea with Stacey T. Bye, everyone.